Last Pine Productions presents the New Way podcast. The New Way contains adult content, including the title of this episode, which has an exclamation point instead of the letter I. That means the actual title of this episode is Episode 107, Batsh exclamation pointed, Crazy Movies. Wow, that is crazy. Listener discretion is advised.
Yeah, well, personally, I can't see what she sees in a hippie-looking numbat like you, but I won't let that fuck me up. I'll give you the benefit of the doubt.
I got a rare still from your first season on the Baker's Dozen. Could you sign it for me, please?
Do you know what you're saying to me? You're saying happy birthday, and you're jumping out of the wall, and it's scaring me to death, and it's some kind of a big joke, and I'm supposed to be happy about that. Well, who needs it?
Everybody wants to be naked and famous. Everybody wants to be just like me and make it.
Will you help teach me about this? What is it? A new way?
Hello, and welcome to the New Way podcast, where we break down pop culture so you don't have to. I'm joined by Ben Wilson on my left and Nicholas Santa Croce on my Skype. How's it going today, gentlemen?
I thought you were about to say Ben Wilson on my left and Nick Santa Croce on my west.
on my, he's the one we like best on the west. It's just hard to remember these things each time.
I'm doing okay. How are you, Matt?
Doing wonderful. And Nick, how are you, my friend?
Thanks for having me, guys. You know, it's a real thrill to be here at the New Way.
Did you eat your candy eventually that has now arrived?
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that, Matt, because I was thinking about our poor
Skype connection is, I think, what you were trying to say.
Los Angeles Wi-Fi.
Yeah, we just lost you for a little bit. We heard.
Listen, you always blame the Wi-Fi on another person. I've got full bars, and my service was checked recently, so I don't know about that. All that matters is that our listenership was deprived of my live reactions with those candies for the Halloween episode, but luckily they have come. So I'm going to give you my reaction for this episode.
Can you shove all of them, each of them in your mouth all at the same time and give us your reaction?
Okay, first off, let me tell you, Nick, the first one
is
not
the first time
good.
you've asked somebody that.
So it doesn't matter if you listen to our reaction and it was god-awful, you still have to eat it.
Well, you know what? I'll just skip number one then. Starting with number two.
No,
let's
that's
see here.
you cheating bastard.
I'm going to mute you on this bit if you don't eat the first one.
Well, let me try.
No, you don't get that treat until you go have the fucking styrofoam.
Well, I mean, you don't like. Oh God.
Yeah, you shouldn't have looked. I ate mine blind, although I really did think I was eating cardboard.
Sorry. Well,
I think this bit should be a gradual bit throughout the course of the night.
Yes, I agree.
Okay, so yes, I know.
Nick's face does not look happy.
Nick, eat. Yeah, the inside's not too bad, but it's still pretty awful.
Yeah, there's some nerds hiding in there.
I love them.
It's nerd styrofoam pocket, motherfucker.
I really like it. I love it.
That really.
Wow.
Oh my God, he ate all 4 of them. Oh, there's some of them leaked nerds into the bag.
I didn't even have the benefit of the mini nerds. I love those styrofoam dishes.
Oh my God, they're like communion wafers. How can you be so anti-church but love the taste of communion wafers?
Oh, that candy. Look at you say, oh, that candy. I love that candy.
My love of communion wafers started when Father Anderson took me.
Oh, that's a story for another day.
Things in your mouth.
Yeah. All right.
I think you should try the second one, and then we should launch off onto some other stuff besides Nick eating candy.
This is great. I
mean, this is the Nick eating candy episode. I hope you prepared for this.
That's episode, whatever it is, 107, Nick
ready for
eating candy.
So, Ben, when was the first time you watched Nick eat candy?
Now?
Is that one that was the gummy with the chocolate on the outside?
Yeah.
That one was weird.
Sure.
Yeah, I didn't like that one either.
Oh, so far 2 for 2, Beth.
Wow.
2 for.
Wow. Well, I'm glad that you enjoy it. Sorry you didn't have it when we actually recorded it.
He likes it.
I'm too, Ben. But you know what? This is actually kind of nice.
To have a little treat?
Just on my island.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. We lost you a little bit, but something about an island, and I think you said pedophile island.
Something about Skull Crusher Island. Something about.
All right. So I definitely wanted to get into two big topics before we get into our episode at large today. So the first is a little bit outdated. We just haven't had a chance to get all three of us in a room on a dedicated podcast for it. But I did want to get your guys' opinion on so Martin Scorsese, and then quickly followed up by Francis Ford Coppola, had some words to say about the state of movies right now, and specifically their disdain for basically Marvel movies and superhero movies. And Scorsese's words were, they're not cinema, they're theme parks, and they're despicable, which I thought was that was the one that I was like, okay, all right, I'll give you theme parks.
Did you read Scorsese's op-ed in the New York Times yesterday?
I heard there was a follow-up to it. I did not see the follow-up.
Well, no, so...
Was it the one where he talked about the artists and the, like, it's making it so that there's no good art anymore?
No. He wrote basically. So there was a series of 3 different interviews where Martin Scorsese said things that were relatively damning in the eyes of fanboys who like, basically these kind of huge pop culture events and comic book movies and things along those lines. And then every single time the message changed a little bit, and I can tell this is basically like an old dude who is like, I feel like slightly being taken out of context, but also is just old school. So
okay, boomer.
So yesterday he wrote an op-ed in the New York Times. It very clearly explains his point, and which is basically that there's no question about the art that goes into making these movies. He's like, you see it on the screen. There's a crazy amount of people who pour their blood, heart, and tears into this stuff. It's not what I prefer, because for me, it takes movies that I'd rather see in theaters when 7 different screens at a 12-screen theater are showing one movie. It doesn't give the audience the options, and a smaller movie. I'm afraid it's going to phase out smaller movies that aren't going to be made otherwise.
Well,
that was his point.
The problem is they didn't put their sweat into it, just their heart.
It's heart and blood and tears.
I mean, whether he's backtracking or not, and I don't know. What's always ironic to me, because Spielberg had a similar thing last year with the whole the anti-Netflix thing, and there's this old school crew of people, and where the irony I thought that was most interesting to me is you have Coppola and Scorsese, who were genre filmmakers and hit it big with genre pieces. And there were people back then talking about, like, I'm not going to go watch Goodfellas. It's a bunch of Italian stereotypes and over-the-top violence, and they beat women and they shoot people and it's gross, and they say fuck a lot.
I think they say slightly different, but yeah, I understand what you're saying.
It's not a one-to-one comparison, but the fact is there were people that derided their movies based on the fact that they were violent or they were sensational or some other things, and I think there's also the idea that only fanboys appreciate the Marvel stuff, or that there's not great storytelling and acting and character work going into those movies. I think that's the part that bothers me a little bit more than some of the other stuff. Is I think there's a general lumping together of all popcorn entertainment, and I think there's good and there's bad, and I think I'm not going to compare Avengers to the Fast and Furious movies, right? I think there's a completely different set of skills being used and storytelling that are cinema to me.
So here's my, and I'm interested in Nick's take on this too, but what I have gotten from everything that I've read from people like Coppola, and not so much Spielberg last year, but from Coppola and from Scorsese, I don't think they're necessarily wrong in some of the cases, that, like in the understanding that they want to be supporters of independent film, and they want independent film to continue to have a place and for stories to continue to be told. That's not a bad thing. I think it's abundantly clear they probably haven't watched any of these movies that we're talking about, the good ones, the ones that we're referring to, that you're referring to right there, the ones that do, beyond the fact of the scale and scope and all of the work that goes into it, the artistry that's obviously inherent in that. So I don't think that they've watched these movies.
No.
And Scorsese would be the first to probably say he's intimated it. He hasn't come out right out say it, but he's like, I don't prefer these types of movies. You haven't watched the fucking movies.
Yeah.
So why? It's a weird thing to comment on when you haven't seen the fucking movies.
Yeah, and I think you're. I mean, it's right.
I don't know. I feel like maybe they absolutely saw the movies. I mean, if you
Scorsese
if you took Sinatra and played him some Oingo Boingo, he'd probably be like, "Oh, what is this? All the synthesizers? That ain't real music. That ain't real music," and then he would be objectively wrong. I think that you can be a good filmmaker and be wrong about film or have a bad take, and he's unquestionably a great filmmaker, one of the greatest, and he can still be wrong.
If you read the New York Times op-ed, it's very clear he doesn't watch these movies. He has not seen these movies.
Fair enough. That's obviously worse. But also, like, I think that old people like to hitch their wagon to bad takes. It's kind of their thing, right?
Okay, millennial.
Listen, the okay boomer joke is, I think, actually very appropriate here because it's just sort of,
Sure.
They know that people will listen. He knew that it would get traction, whether quotes taken out of context or not. He knew he was going to get a reaction, and he got off on it because he's the old person with the shopping cart in the middle of the aisle in Publix who somehow is oblivious to everyone else trying to squeeze past him to get some.
Okay, first off, I think Nick has gone.
The thing is, they don't care.
Nick, you're moving from the okay boomer argument to just straight up ageism right now.
Yeah, that's true. I also did it for comedic effect.
I know.
But the thing is, he knows he's respected. He knows that whatever he says is going to get a rise out of people. And I think that, like, he took a swing. That's how he feels. And it's funny you would comment on something that you haven't seen or care about or care to even know about. But he didn't care because he's Scorsese.
So do you know the irony is that there was a point in time where he was considering making Joker on that script.
Yeah.
That script, that version of Joker. And
he probably would have done something pretty similar to what Todd Phillips did.
Well, the producer of the movie is one of his longtime frequent collaborators and producers. I mean,
at the Alamo Draft House, before they show Joker, they show Taxi Driver trailer during the trailers.
Yeah, I mean, King of Comedy. There's a lot of the framework of Scorsese movies in what they want to do with Joker, but yeah, and they were.
Scorsese.
Yeah, Scorsese.
I think it's Scorsese, not Scorsese. Scorsese.
Right.
Whatever. When I'm angry at him, I'm gonna call him Scorsese. Scorsese. No, it's
Kaiser Scorsese.
Well, it's also funny as well because that somebody like him is not going to come out against like Jurassic Park or Jaws or any of like Spielberg's summer block. I mean, literally his best friend created the summer blockbuster that he's now, he doesn't like the current ones because there's too much, but that was Spielberg's game. I mean, yes, he did other amazing movies as well, but it's, who's to blame for the blockbuster more than Spielberg?
I think when Spielberg came onto the scene as this fresh-faced 20-something, used to sneak on the Universal lot and made it happen and created the blockbuster and has hit after hit at these sort of, you got aliens, you got giant sharks. I'm sure the old guard was like, fuck. It was the same thing. They saw the changing of the guard and it scared them.
Oh, yeah, of course. Robert Wise was just like, what's this fucking kid doing? And it was like, Robert Wise, directed like 5 legitimate classics.
Yeah.
I'm sure
But then he directed the Star Trek movie.
Yeah.
Not a great Star Trek movie.
Not very good.
It just reeks of like, make cinema great again with the red cap on Scorsese. And it's like, okay, maybe you don't like where it's going, but it doesn't mean that it's worse.
Well, it's also I'm a big proponent of put your money where your mouth is, which is one of the reasons why I appreciate Brad Pitt and his production companies. He throws money at small fucking flicks that would never get a chance otherwise. So if these filmmakers are so fucking upset about the current state of things and wham Marvel makes all this money and they're so, you've got more money than God. You want to go and produce a bunch of shit with your own money? You can do that till the cows come home. You can produce anything you want. I think putting the blame on a studio or things that people happen to like is just stupid, and it rubbed me the wrong way for sure. But
No, I mean, like I said, I was slightly playing devil's advocate, and I understand. I don't think the sentiment is malicious. I think
I mean, the word despicable is a tough one to come out of.
Number 3 is really sour, you guys.
Yeah.
Number 3 candy is real sour in the middle.
Yeah. No, I think the despicable line, once again, of course, it's backtracking on Martin Scorsese's part, but it's more about the money machine trying to get these big things on as many screens as possible at the expense of all smaller things. And that's the despicable thing.
Yeah.
And I'm not, like I said, I'm not totally against that sentiment, although I think it's misplaced, completely misplaced. I understand. It's not. What he said is not going to be I'm like, fuck Martin Scorsese. I'm not seeing any of his movies anymore. I'm like,
no, of course not.
No, to me, he seems like an aging talent that's scared of a paradigm shift, I think. And I don't, but that being said, what he has done over his career. What he's done over his career, well, yeah, of course, and to some extent, I agree with you. But what he is also over his career been a huge.
You just said what I said.
He's been a huge champion for independent film over his entire career, and so that you have to understand he's coming with that type of baggage to that conversation. I think, and I mean he's trying to look out for the little guy. And that's he's just doing it the wrong way.
Yeah. Listen, we are actually running a little behind. I want to get our Metamucil commercial break in. Nick, are you ready with that copy over there?
No more old people jokes. I would like to retract my my joke about the grocery store. Not all old people are oblivious in supermarkets. That was a oversimplification, and I apologize if I offended any of our listeners.
I
offended me.
It's you offended Ben. So, and Ben is familiar with pre-code cinema, so he knows what he's talking about. So
I just love how it was such a boomer move to say exactly what I said using different words, and then say you sort of agree with me. That's fun tape.
All right.
Get it out. But also, can we talk number 3, Candy? I have a pretty good sour tolerance, and that was significantly more sour than I expected.
I don't remember what 3 was.
Yeah, it's the one that's only sour in the middle. It's like super sour in the middle.
Oh yeah, the Jawbreakers.
Yeah, little Jawbreakers.
Yeah. They're not too bad. So the other one I definitely want to get into here, and then we'll move on to the topic. And I know Nick is going to be very passionate.
Could be a short one.
We're going to be very passionate about this one, but I do want to get into it here for a quick second. To talk about Sirs Benioff and Weiss, the writers of Game of Thrones, and really what the conversation comes down to is. So I know, Nick, we've discussed this a little bit. For those of you who don't know, Benioff and Weiss, who were the showrunners and writers for the bulk of Game of Thrones, they were toward the last season were hired to write 3 new Star Wars movies, or write and produce 3 new Star Wars movies. The end of Game of Thrones was not universally loved, let's say, for lack of. I mean, again, I don't know. It's hard to tell.
Pull my string, Matt.
It's hard to tell how many people despised it as much as the true fans did, or most people were just like, it was what it was. But they subsequently, just a few months after that end of that series, they were let go from the Star Wars movies. They parted ways. We don't really know exactly what's going on. But this spurred a conversation between Nick and me, basically comparing them to what's happening with Damon Lindelof. So those of you out there that might not know, Damon Lindelof was one of the writers and showrunners on took over showrunning duties on Lost after the first season, first or second season.
No, it was much later than that.
Was that he was late? I was Hughes and Lindelof were on early.
Lindelof I think was just a writer on it, right? And then it wasn't until 4 or 5 that he started.
Yeah, he
4. It was 4.
And he wound up taking it to the end. He and Carlton Hughes took that show to the end, and very similar to Game of Thrones, it was a hugely popular show that had a polarizing final season. We know Nick and I have talked about this on air, kind of where we sit on it. I think Ben's more like bad. I'm in the middle, and Nick it's good. And
I'm actually ambivalent because I watched the last 3 episodes of the season, but I had quit Lost before that.
So what's interesting is that Lindelof has basically learned every mistake that whether you call it a mistake or not, what he did with Lost has formed what he's doing now in television, which was producing The Leftovers, and writing Leftovers, which was an amazing series,
Fantastic.
and now Watchmen, which is poised to be one of the best things on TV. It is phenomenally good 3 episodes in, and it's like this turnaround is kind of amazing. So Nick, I guess the question from me to you is that there are clear parallels between Benioff and Weiss and Lindelof. Do you think Benioff and Weiss have the capability? I know you're not a fan, but I mean, they did write 5 seasons of a great TV show. And whether we say that's George R.R. Martin's framework, it is, but there have been plenty of times someone's fucked up a book series or a TV series doing an adaptation of it. So what are your thoughts?
Sure, and an absolutely good point about the first 5 seasons of Game of Thrones. Obviously, I was like one of the biggest Game of Thrones fans ever those first 5 seasons, and specifically the strength was in the writing and the adaptation. But it's about process. It's about the X factor of writing a big show that's based on a beloved property. You see, Damon Lindelof did this Instagram post with this like 4-page letter to the fans, basically preemptively apologizing if their deep love for Watchmen, would cause them to hate his version and his take. And he recounted this time where he was reading this book with his father, side by side, and how much it means to him, and how he turned down an offer to write it years ago, only to come back feeling like he had something not to prove, but that he could bring something to the series, right? You have that, and then and some of this is hearsay and conspiracy theory, but you have a lot of people who believe that Benioff and Weiss phoned it in those last 2 seasons because they were getting ready with their big Netflix deal. They were getting ready to close Star Wars, another franchise ever. The theory is that they rushed those seasons. That was my whole problem. We had this conversation on the Game of Thrones podcast. I wouldn't necessarily have a problem with where everything ended up if there was some more time and thought put into getting there. Here's the thing. Whether they were fired or quit, it doesn't really matter. There are some people that would say Disney saw this fan reaction, saw what was happening here, started to doubt if their heart was really in it, juggling this major contract with Netflix, and fired them. That's the popular belief, and that's business, whatever. It doesn't need to speak to their talent or professionalism in any way. But then they go off and do an interview and say, no, we just didn't feel like we could give Star Wars the time and effort that it deserved and needed with our other contracts. And then 4 days later, they did an interview saying that toxic fandom, in fact, played a big role in them stepping away from Star Wars. They didn't want to be attacked by toxic fans who just take their Star Wars a little too seriously and weren't going to like anything they did anyway. Well, I got news for you. Maybe Star Wars is more hollow or holy than Watchmen, but the fact of the matter
That's
remains.
the understatement of the year.
It's still a huge undertaking for Lindelof to adapt this and to try to make everybody happy.
It's not an even.
But the way that he's interacted with the fans, and the reverence and the time that he's clearly taken to make sure that this is the best version of whatever his vision was of Watchmen, he has done that. I don't see that with Benioff and Weiss. I see them shrug it off. I see them when when they won the Emmy and someone brought up the problem with the last season. They stepped aside and let Kit Harington, who had just come back from rehab, take that question in front of reporters, and they sunk to the back of the group. They deflect, saying that it's toxic fans and it's their fault and they're overreacting. And I just feel like it is what it is. They phoned it in, and they want to say that we're the bad guys. And I don't buy it. I don't buy it. I like that they're walking away from Star Wars if they don't think they have enough time to do it justice. I just wish they had done that for Game of Thrones.
The biggest issue I have with this is Lindelof did the same shit they did directly post Lost.
Yeah,
the biggest difference is that he had the leftovers before he did Watchmen. Right, he didn't go from one thing into something. He took a book that no one knew.
Right,
that was not a huge popular thing, but had a good hook for it that he could sink his teeth into. But yeah, they rebelled against the fans too, and the fans rebelled against them. So you guys were sloppy. And you offered us a puzzle box show, and you didn't reveal any of the things in the puzzle box. You opened up all these threads, and blah blah blah. Then it became a joke that you hire Lindelof to start a story. And then you get someone else to finish it because he's not going to do it. He was reviled at a point in the very same way that these guys are, and that was mainly the.
I mean, post Prometheus, I was just like, I'm not going to watch anything this guy ever does. I was appalled by how bad that movie was. Absolutely appalled with what they would do, what they did with that script. It's the most nonsensical, dumbest sci-fi script I've ever could possibly imagine.
Because Game of Thrones season 8 is technically fantasy.
So exactly, touche. But anyways, no, but
you get another candy.
but I also think that we're also talking about a period of time. When was the last season of Lost? 2013.
2010.
2010. That was 9 years ago. That was 9 years ago. When did Game of Thrones finish? This year. So, yeah, there's a huge difference between those two. There's a huge difference, I think, between Lindelof and Benioff and Weiss. And here's the thing is, I actually, if I have to go on a limb and say who is more talented, Benioff and Weiss or Lindelof, I'm going to say Lindelof. Surprise. Because Lindelof has proven in some areas to be an incredibly competent and great writer. And Benioff and Weiss only have one thing to go off of, which has, regardless of how you want to look at it, a marginal, returns as it has proceeded. So who knows? They might come out, Benioff and Weiss might come out with the leftovers, and they might blow everybody's fucking socks off.
Well, and also, I didn't know this because I was researching it. Benioff wrote, at first I thought he just wrote the script for 25th Hour, but he wrote the book and the script that the movie was based on, basically adapted his own book. I didn't know that.
I love that movie.
Which I'm a big fan of that movie.
Such a great script.
Well, look, can I end on one last thought?
Yes, sir.
And I sort of started thinking about this.
Hold on really quick, though. By the way, just to clarify for anybody who's not watching it, and I haven't yet, and I need to start watching it, Watchmen is not an adaptation. It's another story that happens within the context of the same universe. So calling it an adaptation of a fan property, I think, is a complete misnomer. Because if anything, Lindelof played it safe with that community of saying, I want to expand this universe, but I'm not going to tread on this well.
You need to watch the show.
Okay.
What I think is really interesting with that show very quickly is that obviously it's like, forget the movie.
Sure.
Very quickly it says forget the movie, but it is mired in the comic book. It is constant references, recaps, things that happen in it. This is very much a continuation of the story very quickly. It's like 30 years difference in time.
No, I know.
So there's a lot of crossover. But yeah, it's a broadening of the universe, but not.
I'm just saying
that broad.
I'm saying the events that happen in the graphic novel are not what are being shown on screen.
No. But they talk. So
it's not an adaptation. It's a continuation.
No, you're right. You're right. I'm just
saying.
It's
like the Star Wars books that came after all the Star Wars movies came out. The first Star Wars movies.
I'm just saying it is. There is a lot of.
So back to Benioff and Weiss and what I was saying before we went off the rails to argue for no reason.
Sorry.
If you are hiring a showrunner, either Damon Lindelof or Benioff and Weiss, now take experience kind of out of it, because you're right. Lindelof has had the luxury of learning some tough lessons and coming out the other side. Benioff and Weiss have not so far even had an opportunity to do that. So taking that out of account, this is how I started thinking about this. I was talking to my friend Dave, who is a just absolute Lost hater. And I said, who would you rather show run your concept, your series? And without hesitation, he said Benioff and Weiss. And it was exactly what Matt said. He goes, well, they gave us 5 seasons of amazing television. The last 2 weren't good, but I'll take that over David Lindelof and Lost, because he was still sour about Lost. But when you look at it it depends on what you're looking for. And for me, and yes, some of it's hearsay, but to me, it seems like you have the difference between two guys who, if you're on a job interview and you look at someone's resume and you said, oh, hey, you really hop around jobs a whole lot. It makes you look bad. It makes you look like you give up on a company or they give up on you. Damon Lindelof is a guy that's stuck with the same company. Maybe hasn't had as big of a hit, but works hard and at least at the very end of the day gives a shit. And I think that the impression I get in their interviews and how cavalier they are and how they brush things off and object, though they're the type of guys that would accept your offer and leave you high and dry the day before their start date because they found something better. And
I think that's a lot. That's a lot of sort of. I think you're to say that that's the case is pretty loose. I don't think that that's necessarily.
I feel like I prefaced that.
No, I think the other thing is that
it's my deep-seated love for Game of Thrones, rosy-colored glasses, and just a gut feeling that, to me, I've seen even during Lost, I've seen Lindelof reach out to the fans, and sure he was frustrated, but clearly they even took their own what they saw on the message boards into account in their writing.
There he goes.
I just don't feel like.
No,
I'd be worried for Star Wars because I would want this to be with somebody who had complete faith and weren't mired in controversy or thinking about doing any other projects. I would want them to just you're entrusted with the world post Princess Leia, post Han Solo, presumably post Luke Skywalker. That's a big deal to usher this franchise into the next series of tentpole franchises. You can't be worried about your Netflix contract or treating fans of your show like shit.
But again, there's a lot of there's a lot of guesswork in that of your thing. For me,
right?
If I was those two guys, no matter how much I love, in fact, the more I love the show, the more I would respond exactly how they respond because it would fucking hurt. And I think you got to go back to what it was like in 2010 when this was all happening with Lindelof and Hughes, and they were getting slammed. And they tried, Nick, you're right. They tried to meet the fans, and be like, okay, we're gonna talk to you. And they got hit even fucking worse and told they were useless. Whatever. That is not an easy or fun thing to do. And I think the ultimate thing I wanted to get out of this conversation is I think there is elitist is maybe the wrong term, but there is this viewpoint that just the shit that these people do is easy, or I could do better, or blah, blah, blah. And there's a dismissiveness to the amount of work and care. And I hate to just see people, I don't like seeing these two guys reduced to shit. And I think that's what bothered me the most when I'm reading about this stuff. And I think, yes, absolutely, the fan reaction got into Star Wars, the Star Wars people's heads. And no, I don't know how much they were split between the two or thinking about another property or whatever it was. It certainly seemed like they were invested in the shit they were doing. But the fact that they don't respond to the fans when they put them on the spot in a question, what do they fucking say?
And Nick, also the first part to fixing the problem is identifying that there is one. Star Wars has an immensely toxic fan culture.
Yes.
I mean, look at the last Star Wars movie that came out. We're talking about people who were asking for it to be wiped from the entire lexicon of the Star Wars universe. So I would never. I don't even want to work on a Star Wars movie. I want to stay as far away from that shit as possible.
Yeah, I kind of agree. It sounds like the worst possible job I could think of right now is working on Star Wars.
And meanwhile, Ryan Johnson has a movie that's coming out in 2 weeks. It's 100% on Rotten Tomatoes and Knives Out.
These are all honestly really good points. I would now play devil's advocate a bit and say, if there were tapes, oh lordy, if there were tapes, Benioff and Weiss openly saying, this 5 years into Game of Thrones, like, let's get the fuck out. Let's tell HBO to shorten the last season. We can fit it in. It's fine. There'll be backlash, but whatever. We got to get Star Wars. If there was proof that you heard that, how would that make you feel? Because that's how I feel without proof of that happening. Just watching the season and watching how they've reacted to things.
That's the
not to take away
silliest
from-
question you've ever posed on the podcast.
And by the way, season 6 and 7 of Game of Thrones run just as long as seasons 2 and 3. So there's no.
I don't know how to answer
moot.
that. It's a completely hypothetical. I could ask the same question about Damon Lindelof in Lost or anything else. It doesn't exist, right? It doesn't
It's
exist.
hypothetical.
Question.
If they come out and they go, yeah, we didn't give a shit about the show, which I find very hard to believe that two people whose entire career is owed to a thing, and they get to the last stretch and they just go, nah, I don't really fuck
it.
It does not make any fucking sense to me. I don't care how big of a cookie they've got in front of them. It just doesn't. It doesn't ring true. And it doesn't mean that I like.
And I'm not saying that they didn't do that, because there's always the possibility
Yeah.
out there that they did that.
But
that's what Nick thinks.
I just
but-
think
Well,
it
no,
is
I think
unfair
to
to
clarify.
judge them.
To clarify, I think that it's not that they didn't care, and it's not that they didn't work really hard. I think they did all of those things. I just think that in addition to that, they wanted it to be over as soon as possible, and they did their best to accomplish that. But overall, the series suffered for it. Does that make sense? I'm not questioning
Sure.
their integrity in that way. I feel like a choice
Understood.
was made to let's get this done as quickly as we can. We're not gonna, we're gonna do our best, but at the same time, that's what hurt it the most, and I'm still sore over something I love so
I
much.
I understand.
Seeming to be so carelessly ended, and it sucks.
I don't mean to seg really hard, but right before we get into the actual
Oh,
topic,
seg me hard.
seg you so hard. But just because we were talking about new HBO shows, I watched the pilot of the first episode for His Dark Materials.
I heard good things.
I was super impressed.
Nice.
I had no idea that Tom Hooper directed it, the pilot. And that is the most easily since Game of Thrones, and even more so, probably anything I've ever seen on HBO, feels like the most fully lived in and realized world within this fantasy context right off the bat. I was just like, oh, I've bought in, 100% bought in.
Mark Travellini, who's probably listening to this, wanted to know what our take was on it. But
Well, Mark, I was just like, yes, I'm watching I'm watching these episodes live.
I've
from
heard
now
really good
on.
things. I actually got the books because an old buddy of mine, Wes, was a big fan of the books. And then when Golden Compass came out, it was originally they did a film adaptation of the first one, and apparently it was god awful terrible.
So I didn't hate it actually when it came out.
Have you read the books?
So I had not read the books
Okay.
then, and then I read the first book. And I was like, because the movie actually covers like the first book and a half. It's kind of
But they
weird.
cut out all the religion stuff. Yeah.
There isn't. Yeah. I mean, because Philip Pullman's a very, very prominent atheist, or was a very prominent atheist. I think he's technically more agnostic now, but yeah, there was a huge underpinning of that they kind of that the Whites. I think it was Paul Weitz who directed the first one. They pulled back on that a little bit.
No, he wanted it. The studio, studio took the movie out of his hands and re-edited it, and then reshot.
Not surprised.
Kind of upset.
Not surprised.
Yeah, but yeah, I'm really curious to watch it. I'm very curious for your take on Watchmen. When you
I'll
get
start it
there,
soon.
I have a feeling you're gonna go pretty gaga for it. But
Yeah, I'm sure I will.
We'll see. But on to our main event conversation for the podcast. What are you eating now, Nick? Are those the weird?
Get ready.
They're not weird. They're delicious. The bourbon gummy bears.
I didn't think those were bad either.
Oh no, what was the one that was a
don't-
Bailey's thing I didn't like?
I think
normally
it's
do
the very last one. I think
okay.
Well, that's what I also had those.
it is the last one.
A severely crushed candy cone.
Oh, but that was the
Candy
best
was-
candy. That was the best one of the whole night.
Yeah, the candy comb is delicious.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was pulverized.
But it's still good. It doesn't matter.
I still poured the crumbs into my mouth.
Yeah, you should have just stuck your finger in that dust and licked it off.
Oh, God, I did. He did. I saw it. It was, you were talking about His Dark Materials, and I was watching them, and it was gross.
And
scene. On to our main event.
That was just batshit insane, you guys.
That was ding ding ding. You said the magic word. Yeah. Well done. This was a early request. And I apologize. I think it came off of a chat. Maybe it was Casey had gone to see. How Did This Get Made? One of the live podcasts. We were kind of talking about what our favorite batshit crazy movies were. And we decided this would be a really good podcast topic. Also, maybe a chance for us to get into a few things we haven't talked about ad nausea on here. I try to pick purposely things that we have not beat to death.
And we're not talking about just crazy movies. These are batshit crazy movies, which puts it, I believe, into a whole new echelon.
Yeah,
of
and
crazy.
It's tricky. I'm sure there might be some disagreements here of whether because I think when you look at kind of crazy movies, you've got these strange horror ones. You've got the kids movies that don't really belong to kids movies genre. You've got fantasy movies that just build a fucking crazy world. There's a lot of different ways this one can kind of pan out for us. So I'm curious to see what everybody's brought. I do know Nick had me pull a clip from something that was, I have like a list of like 30 ones on here, so I'm going to let him do that. I want you to kick off with that one because it's a really good movie, Nick. Do you want me to play the clip?
Well, not yet. I think that Ben is right. The batshit label is a very special connotation. There are some crazy movies, but to be batshit, I think you have to question how many beers you had. You question reality a little bit. And I think that the movie that we have a clip coming up for is sort of, it skirts the line between mainstream Hollywood movies and that batshit moniker.
So hold on before we do it, and so just so people understand what we're talking about when we say batshit crazy movies. Okay, so I feel like there are a few discernibly like different things that can make a movie crazy. Is it crazy visually? Is the narrative completely unhinged? Does it not follow any sort of common sort of thread when it comes to storyline or character work? And like, for example, I'm just, you could throw any movie out there that could be like Slacker. Okay, for example, a movie that we've talked about before.
How about The Room? Is The Room batshit?
Well, I think it's batshit, but see, once again, that's batshit just because it's so bad.
Yeah.
But
you
would
go
batshit.
You
would go batshit.
But the thing is I think that what we're probably bringing, and what I would assume we're all bringing to the table, are things that it's not just one thing that's like a little bit off about this movie. It's not just one thing, it's not like, oh, they have a weird sort of, 5-act structure. That's so weird. It's so crazy or whatever. Or it's a procedural, or it's a movie with a bunch of vignettes. Maybe a crazy concept in a couple of things. But we're talking about shit that is crazy, like where everything flies off the rails in completely different directions, which is awesome because this week I saw a batshit crazy movie. In the theater. And we'll get to that towards the end.
But they're still releasing.
Now let's just do it. Let's just talk about it now. You brought it up.
No, I want to talk about it because it's the most recent movie I've seen.
I think we should stop talking about setting things up and then not doing them. Which was it? I don't even know what it is. I have no guess. In the theater?
Yes, this week I saw Dave Eggers' The Lighthouse in the theater, which is an absolute bananas fucking madness film.
And he's the director of The Vivitch.
The Vivitch.
And what's the other one? He did another one.
No. The Witch is his only other movie. And so The Witch is.
Hold on a second. Also, I really want to see The Lighthouse. I have not seen The Lighthouse. So if I need to
I'm not gonna spoil anything for you. I'm not gonna spoil anything for you. But it is indicative of all of the other movies that we're going to be talking about, where we're talking about crazy things. It's basically like a Cronenberg fever dream wrapped into Ancien Andalou, and then like with a weird like French New Wave feel on top of it, and absolutely no narrative structure.
Sweet.
So let's start with Ancien Andalou.
And
now let's go back to 1933, Salvador Dali.
And Jenny Wicker gave it 2 vehement thumbs down on Facebook. So
that was the best part. Is I said I went to see the movie, and then immediately one of our friends' fiancés posted online and was just like, "Has anybody seen The Lighthouse? It got great reviews. This was terrible, plotting, boring, awful. It was just terrible." Paul, you'd probably like it. Which I was just honestly, that was meant as a shot at Paul. And I was just like, honestly, that makes me proud of Paul, because it might be a movie that Paul will not like that movie, I guarantee you. As a matter of fact, here's what I will say. And somebody else said this exact same thing to me, and I completely agree with it. It's a movie I could never recommend to anybody. but it's a movie that I thought was perfect.
That's awesome.
Holy shit. Well, now I really want to see it. You'd recommend it to me, though, wouldn't you?
Oh, I don't even know, because you could go either way on it. Like you could love it and you could also hate it. I don't blame anybody for hating the movie. The way that they shot it was so unique. I mean, they basically shot it on an anamorphic lens and then crunched the image down so it looked like a silent film. I mean, they specially made lenses, and the framing is just bizarre. I mean, it's the encapsulation of madness. That movie is the encapsulation of madness.
Good Lord. Well, speaking of the encapsulation of madness, Nick, what was the movie we were about to get into?
Yeah, sorry.
Well, I think that having not even seen The Lighthouse yet and just having seen the trailer, I think Lighthouse is probably a more apt batshit. However, when I was trying to think of maybe one of the very first quote-unquote batshit movies I ever saw as a kid, one movie sticks out, and it's Alex Winter's Freaked.
And we're going to play the trailer Nick has loaded up for us here. So this is the trailer for the movie Freaked.
Ricky Coogan, Brat Pack Sleazebag. Elijah C. Scuggs, Freak Show Tycoon, an amateur bioengineer.
I can look at a guy like Kevin Costner and see a giant peach grub.
When fate brought them together, Mr. Scuggs took an average Hollywood slime ball and made something out of him.
Oh, God! This was my good side!
20th Century Fox presents Freaked. It's about friendship,
I thought I told you to shut up!
loyalty,
I say we kill him!
life's big questions,
How many feminists does it take to screw in a light bulb?
oh, show business.
The public does not want to see disgusting, depraved, violent filth.
And I suppose Jake and the Fat Man was just a fluke.
It's about state-of-the-art technology. It's about Mr. T's the bearded lady.
I am woman. Now like me.
It's about Bobcat Goldthwait as a sock.
It's the end of the world! The apocalypse!
It'll make you laugh. It'll make you cry.
And it'll make a cold sore that you thought had healed up start bugging you again.
It's the kind of film Brooke Shields has always wanted to do.
Oh.
What the fuck?
Introducing Larry Bud Melman as the President of the United States.
What's the matter? Afraid of a little rock stuff?
In Freaked, coming soon to a theater. Freaked, but ugly, but funny.
Welcome to show business, morons!
Okay, so I don't know what just happened. I never saw this movie. I never really even heard about this movie.
Are you serious?
Yeah, I never saw it.
Oh my God, Ben! Alex Winter with Keanu Reeves as the dog boy.
From Bill and Ted. It's
No, I never
Alex
saw
Winters,
this.
everyone. It's
So,
for
so,
our-
so,
for our
is,
listening
so is it a
audience.
bunch of different vignettes? Is it a vignette movie where everything?
No.
it's actually
No,
an ongoing thing.
It has a plot.
it's
Technically.
On
yeah.
a scale of like normal to Forbidden Zone, where does it land?
Well, Forbidden Zone is my next on my list.
Yeah, we knew it was going to be.
I would say.
I think it's
I would
between
say-
UHF and Forbidden Zone.
Okay,
It's
that-
like
that
on
makes
the
sense.
way from UHF to Forbidden Zone.
Okay.
You've got to stop at
That's
Freak.
really good.
I'm gonna
That's
have to watch
really,
it. I'm
really good.
gonna have to watch it.
A lot of the batshit elements are just like random cameos and puppets and gross out special effects, and the whole movie you're just like, what the fuck just happened? And it's a constant barrage of that from start to finish, and it's really fun. But it's the first thing I could ever think of as a kid saying,
Well, it sounded.
Wow, that was batshit.
Well, it sounded bad shit.
Yeah,
to
it's
me.
co-directed by Alex Winter and was the other guy Tom Stern. But yeah, it's one of those that you as a kid I remember I'm like, oh, it's got Bill from Bill and
Yeah.
Ted, so I'm gonna watch this, and I knew that like Keanu Reeves had this weird cameo in it as this like not he doesn't speak right. Does he have a line? Does he have
I
any
don't
lines in
think
it?
so.
I think it's just like a visual in like bad dog makeup. It's crazy. It is a super crazy movie. I was super glad that you had that on your list, Nick.
it is but this guy that finds this Randy Quaid plays this like freak show proprietor who
It's like a
goes-
Barnum.
He's like a Dr. Moreau meets Barnum, and he makes these weird creatures that forces them to perform in his freak show.
Oh.
And so you have these crazy set pieces and these. I mean, they had to have some money for this movie. I remember it feeling pretty elevated, but I'm sure it didn't make any money.
Well,
yeah.
I mean, interesting.
That trailer is
What do you
amazing.
think we thought, Proceed?
Since we brought up Forbidden Zone, why don't you go ahead and talk a little bit about Forbidden Zone? Because I was introduced to Forbidden Zone by Mr. Nick Santacroce.
Hold on, I do want to just share this very quickly. Budget for Freaked was $11 million.
11 million.
Opening weekend made $7,000.
$7,000.
$6,957 in October of 1993.
That's like a Mallrats style.
Keanu
open.
Reeves was paid $1 million for his uncredited role as Ortiz the dog boy.
Wow.
Yes.
No way. He
Yes.
was actually paid $1 million.
Yes.
I imagine you could find some pretty good trivia on the IMDb.
Oh,
page.
for sure.
Oh, holy shit.
And it's funny. I actually just watched a movie last night that I wish somehow could fit this conversation, but it was more bad than it was batshit. It was bad shit.
I think there's room for bad in the bat shit as well.
Sure.
Have you seen Kroll?
Oh, yes.
Kroll the Conqueror?
Kroll is this movie from 1983, very good year. It is trying to build off of the unexpected success of Star Wars. It was the same year Return of the Jedi came out, too.
Oh, I remember that one. Okay.
It's more fantasy. It's more
I
fantasy.
saw that when I was a kid.
Well, it is about 47 minutes of it are people just climbing mountains or walking through the same set piece over and over again. It is so hard to get through. But there are random creatures but get this though, the budget for Krull, and watch the trailer, loyal listeners. You're in for a treat. That's the only way you should watch Krull. The budget was
I've seen Krull.
$47 million, which adjusted for inflation is around $130 million. It was one of the most expensive films ever made in the 80s at that point.
Isn't it Liam Neeson's first movie?
Liam Neeson is in it and has like 2 lines.
Yeah. I think it's his first movie.
A mullet. It might be.
In the comedy classic Krull.
It's the henchman.
So why don't you get into Forbidden Zone, then I'll hop onto one here. Because Forbidden Zone is, I was sure you were going to talk about that one. So
yeah, I mean, what is there to say about Forbidden Zone?
Okay, explain some context. Like, what is Forbidden Zone? Who it was directed by?
I got this, buddy. So, I was a huge fan of Oingo Boingo in high school, and did a little deep digging and found out that the band was actually in a movie directed by Danny Elfman's brother, Richard. So it became this sort of white whale. And before the internet, it was very hard to figure out how
Or worked.
get
Like, it doesn't work
this
now.
video. Yeah. It was behind the beaded doorway in the porno section.
Oh, yeah.
In our voice of video, which was like an off-brand Blockbuster in Baltimore. And it couldn't find it. I finally ended up getting it through a friend who had dubbed it about 13 times. It was like the original underground video before you could just look it up online. And it is filmed in black and white. And it's like a combination of the Cabinet of Dr. Caligari meets Suspiria. It's this surreal comedy and homemade set pieces. It's very problematic watching it now. There is a character that is in total blackface the entire movie. There is lots,
which was okay back then.
I don't even think it was really okay back then. And Richard Elfman has since addressed this.
I was joking.
But like it is again sort of just a constant barrage of costumes and songs and craziness. Danny Elfman in a white tux and tails and devil horns doing a riff of Minnie the Moocher as Satan, and that's probably the most commercially. Socially acceptable scene in the whole movie.
What's funny is that movie was introduced to me by one of our listeners back in 2004 or 5. My buddy Helgi was playing it at a Halloween party, or like a pre-party for us to go out to Moonfest for Halloween one year. And I was like, "What is this?" He's like, "You've never seen Forbidden Zone?" And I was like, "Holy shit, this is crazy, crazy." Yeah, it is almost indescribable. There's not really any sort of plot. It's just sort of things happening.
I think that really what it was. He was trying to carve out a whole new genre, which is absurdist, surreal comedy. And that is the benchmark for a batshit movie. You're like, not sure what you watched. You sort of question reality, and it definitely accomplishes that. It's just been an underground. It was called the Citizen Kane of B movies for many years.
For sure. Awesome. So I had a few on here. Some of them were older, some were new, and I was trying to get. I knew you guys were going to raise the batshit level very high on here.
Yeah.
So I wanted to try to find some things you might not know. I know one of these, Ben, you know, but so I'll get to that one in a second. But there's a movie I was very fond of called Filth, which I'm not sure if you guys know. Is James McAvoy.
Yeah.
Filth is a really, really fucking bizarre movie, just from a tonal aspect. I don't know if either of you have seen it or not.
I have.
You have. So you do not consider this batshit?
No.
You're smirking at me over there.
No, I wasn't smirking at you. I was raising my eyebrows because I understand what you're thinking about. Because that's why I kind of had the preface. Is because I agree that it is crazy from sort of a visceral and from a sort of a narrative standpoint, but there's something that feels still relatively like parts of that movie feel borrowed, like the aesthetic feels borrowed from other movies.
So
it feels kind of Guy Ritchie-ish.
I'll tell you where I differ a little bit in that. I'll tell you where I differ in that opinion. It mainly comes down to where the movie ends up, because I think you're 100% correct that the movie built, especially the way the trailers build it, they bill it as a Guy Ritchie fast talking McAvoy is just this like asshole bad lieutenant, basically like a Bad Lieutenant, takeoff, which is another batshit crazy movie, by the way.
Yeah.
Bad Lieutenant, Port Call New Orleans. But where the movie goes with that storyline, I thought was where it to me fell off of a normal narrative. Especially the last shot of the movie is a very dark and weird place to end off of a movie that starts. So you start Guy Ritchie, then you go, oh no, this is actually just like a character study on this broken person, and they're leading themselves towards a good life. And then you get to the last shot that's so nihilistic, really, in its thing. And that's kind of where I felt that the movie was. Batshit's difficult because I understand what you're saying. Batshit shouldn't necessarily have a lesson or a but I figured there would be some pushback on some of the ones I chose on this. But for me, I thought it was such a tonally strange movie, and it's definitely one of those. It's very hard you can't tell what the movie is from the trailer because there's no way to market it.
Yeah. I won't disagree with all of your points. I would if it was me, I'd firmly put it outside the batshit. I would just put it as more of a very crazy.
Well, it does come down to you, Ben. So I'm down -1 points on the podcast.
So first
tonight.
off, how about this? How about you play the clip?
I didn't go either way.
How about you play the clip that I would like? Here's my only preface. This is from 1968, so I'm sorry that we have to go back a little bit, but I'm gonna play a quick clip.
Well, at least it's postcode. Finally,
play a quick clip for you.
Here we go.
Hey, now wait a minute.
Ben's gonna get us back off
Just a
track.
minute. Hey, we are the monkeys. You know we love to please. A manufactured image with no philosophies.
We hope you like our story, although there isn't one. That is to say, there's many. That way there is more fun.
You've told us you like action and games of many kinds. You like to dance, we like to sing, so let's all lose our minds.
We know it doesn't matter, because what you came to see is what we'd love to give you, and give it 1, 2, 3.
But it may come 3, 2, 1, 2, or jump from 9 to 5. And when you see the end in sight, the beginning may arrive.
For those who look for meanings, inform as they do fact, we might tell you one thing, but we'd only take it back.
Not back like in a box back, not back like in a race, not back so we can keep it, but back in time and space.
You say we're manufactured. To that we all agree. So make your choice and we'll rejoice in never being free.
Hey, we are the monkeys. We've said it all before. The money's in, we're made of tin, we're here to give you more. The money's in, we're made of tin, we're here to give you...
Okay, so the most popular show and fake band on TV, the Monkees, made a movie written by Jack Nicholson on LSD that ruined their career and the director's career, which was a nonsensical, drug-fueled, straight-up, completely episodic movie called Head. And starring the Monkees. And with Jack Nicholson and actually a lot of Dennis Hopper is in it in the cameo.
Of course.
It's the most ridiculous movie. It was made in 1968. And in retrospect, after that, the Monkees were dead after that movie came out. It was so poorly received by the public because, first off, it made no sense. Everyone was just like, this movie's for druggies, which it pretty much was. The movie starts with the Monkees, a politician having a hard time getting a microphone to work for like 3 minutes while trying to announce the opening of a bridge. The Monkees all run. The drummer of the Monkees jumps off the bridge. He's rescued by mermaids. It then hard cuts to a girl making out with every member of the Monkees and then declaring them. When somebody walks out, it's like, so what was the?
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. We were even.
At what timestamp does the lesbian moment happen at?
No. That means
Okay.
it's
Hey, listen. People
anyways,
say they
it's
must
it's
be around.
bizarre. It's one of the more bizarre movies I've ever seen because there's absolutely no rhyme or reason. It was meant as a comedy. It was meant as one of these like kind of bizarre, just like it takes you from one thing to the next. And the ironic part is if you watch it now, you're just like, this is actually kind of fucking elevated and amazing. It's kind of awesome because it's so
Elevated? You mean high?
Yeah, totally,
Yeah.
yes. But it is actually there's a lot of social messaging throughout the movie, but the ironic part is
Like,
that,
don't do drugs.
right. The original cut of the movie was like an hour and 55 minutes long, and they cut like 30 minutes out of it. So all we really have, unless you look at the Criterion, which I think has some restored scenes, is the 86-minute version that we're left out with. But still, that 86 minutes feels like a trip. Like you can watch it stone cold sober, and you will finish that movie and feel like you've gone on a drug
Just to
trip.
make sure our audience out there understands, this is the band The Monkees. Ben is not describing a movie with
Monkees.
actual monkeys, which would also be a very bad.
We're talking about Davy
crazy.
Jones
Yes.
and the Monkees.
Peter Tork and
Yes.
Mike Nesmith and Mickey Dolenz.
There you
If
go.
you've ever seen Lancelot Link, that's also pretty bad shit. That has actual Mickey in it.
But if the fun part about
I love that show.
the fun part about the movie in retrospect, and you can watch it for free on YouTube. Anybody can go on YouTube and watch the whole movie. The fun part in retrospect is that what the Monkees were doing is they were like, and you hear it there at the end of the little intro. They're like, the money's in, we're made of tin. We're here, and we're like,
Yeah.
They're like, we've gotten paid on this shit. Nobody takes us seriously, so we're gonna do something completely that reaches into that next generation, like to the druggy hippie, kind of counterculture. And so they simultaneously got ridiculed by that counterculture, who of course outright despised them because they were the Monkees.
Yeah.
And Monkees fans were completely alienated because it sounded nothing like the Monkees and was nothing like the Monkees show.
It's crazy.
It's a crazy, crazy, crazy thing. And so I go on YouTube, watch it. It's absolutely worth it.
Is
Right.
it on YouTube? The full movie?
Oh yeah,
Full
I
movie
pulled that
is
clip
on
from the
YouTube.
full movie.
Wow.
You can get on that tonight.
That's one
I
of those.
wasn't sure what I was going to watch tonight on my LSD trip, but now look, just kind of.
You ate the LSD candy already? Oh,
Yeah, it's delicious.
Oh no.
Oh no.
Nick,
How that last
What about
one-
you,
or
Nick?
Nick or Matt? Any other? What are some other?
I got
ones that popped up?
Well, I actually have one that I watched with Nick. We did a very quick capsule review
talk
on
about
here. But this was this summer. We watched Midsummer, which was the follow-up to Hereditary. And we talked about it a little bit on air, but it is, if you want to go for the full-out batshit kind of moniker, I think, Nick, you would say it qualifies for batshit. Very similar to, well, not similar to Hereditary. Hereditary goes some crazy places, and this is like, well, that's cute, Hereditary, but let's like go like full on Nordic.
Right.
I have a feeling that Jeremiah Erickson will watch Midsummer and feel it is the best documentary film he has seen all year. That is my personal guess on there. But yeah, it is a simple premise. A girl breaks up. A girl loses her family. She her boyfriend's gonna go on this trip to Denmark or like out somewhere in the Nordic areas. he thinks he's going to get rid of her because she's become kind of a bit of a chore. His friends don't like her. She's very emotional, obviously, because she's lost family. She decides she's going to come on this trip with him, and hilarity ensues. Not exactly, but they wind up basically with this sort of tribe, and there are a lot of rituals that the tribe enacts. So that's about all I really want to tell you without spoiling too much in it. But it definitely likes to hit you with some very bizarre imagery that it loves to also it basically foreshadows everything constantly. There's just a lot of things that pay off as you get toward the end of the movie. But it has one scene in particular that I think two scenes in particular that will definitely have people concerned about what they're watching.
I've got one to piggyback on that.
Sure.
Nick, is there anything that you want to talk about, like as far as Midsummer goes?
No.
Well, I think Antichrist is a very good one to Lars von Trier's Antichrist is a good one to put on there because I feel like the Ari Aster horror feels kind of in the vein of the Lars von Trier horror, in that there's just an uncomfortable sort of feeling, and that things happen very strangely and weirdly at very strange parts of the narrative.
You feel like you kind of need to take a shower after watching some of it.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, that's all Lars von Trier movies.
Yeah.
But no. Anyways, I wanted to throw that one out there.
Yeah.
Which has, for those who aren't aware, Antichrist isn't actually about the Antichrist. It's about a couple that lose a son tragically, and then they go to reconnect in the woods, and then a lot of weird stuff happens, and it ends up with Willem Dafoe basically ejaculating blood at one point.
Yeah, there's a lot of Willem Dafoe
song. Oh no, that's Fire. Never mind.
Yeah, there is a lot of Willem Dafoe.
There's a lot of
his co-star. It is a not entirely enjoyable experience to watch.
Very similar to The Lighthouse, actually.
Yeah, it's tough. It's a tough one. I will not argue the batshit on that one. That movie stuck with me, and then I didn't want to see it again.
Well, I had the last candy, the Bailey's candy, and I loved it.
I liked it too. I was the only one that liked it.
I liked every candy.
Wow.
Every single one.
I can't believe you like that packing
candy.
material.
I love all the candies. Thanks, Beth. But can I get a ruling?
Sure.
From the jury? My boy, John Waters, Female Trouble or Pink Flamingos? Batshit insane?
Pink Flamingos is definitely batshit.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
I mean, there's literal shit. There's human shit that makes it batshit for, like, I think that counts.
Shit. It's dog shit.
It's a dog shit. Dog shit.
Yeah. Okay, good. I was thinking the same thing for sure. I had to at least give John Waters a shout out. But I have to say, you guys, this is a really, really good timing for this episode because I've been saving this for last. And we always have the minutia of, what our topic is, what is batshit, what isn't, and we can defer. But I guarantee you, if you see any of Noboru Oguchi's films, which is basically like Japanese trauma films.
Wait. Say that again. You cut out.
Yeah, you cut out. What was that?
Noboru Oguchi, filmmaker in Japan. Yeah. He makes like trauma, like Japanese trauma films. Toxic Avenger, Romeo and Juliet. You've seen the Lloyd Kaufman masterpieces at some point in your adolescence, no doubt. But
okay.
This guy has, I think he did adult videos at one point. One was called Final Pussy, where this character, as a result of a military experiment gone wrong, has guns burst from her breast when sexually aroused, and that was actually pornography. But he's known for actual feature-length films that sort of skirt the horror splatter genre with some of the most random batshit imagery I've ever seen. I just discovered him. Mike Maroney goes, "We're going to watch Dead Sushi." I go, "Dead Sushi?" Also, full movie available on YouTube about sushi that becomes possessed and kills people.
I like this.
The sushi
like
chef
rubber.
was...
Yeah.
The sushi chef has a customer say it wasn't the best sushi he's ever had. He ripped out katana and just goes on. It is really just one random thing after the other. But he also did A Larva to Love was his first film. Cat-Eyed Boy, The Machine Girl, Robo Geisha, which I
know
really,
Robo Geisha. That one I know.
God, I wanted to give you
Yeah,
that clip,
you do.
but
shut up, Ben.
I wanted it is one of the best trailers to any film I've ever seen, Ben. And I wanted to give you a clip, but it's hard to understand him without the text, and too much happens for it to work. But the guy who's narrating it it starts off, geisha is girl. Geisha is wild. Geisha is robot. and then the trailer totally takes off. The one geisha turns into a tank and starts scaling a skyscraper. Another one had a katana come out of her armpits and decapitate 2 men with a swivel of her hip.
I know this one from the Corridor Digital guys. They did it on one of their episodes where they were doing the CGI.
I was like, this sounds familiar.
Well, you should, if you love that, you should also see Mutant Girl Squad, Karate Robo Zabugar, Zombie Ass. Oh, Zombie Ass. And this latest one from 2019, The Flowers of Evil. And it's based on a manga series.
Wow.
That sounds pretty good. But if you just look up Noboru Iguchi,
you dropped out there, Nick.
Is every trailer that this guy's ever made, any movies ever made, is on YouTube, and it is all just a gold mine of batshit. But what I thought was going to happen is, you ever watch a Mystery Science Theater 3000 episode, and you're like, I'm going to watch the actual movie they made fun of, and you turn it on, and you realize I can't get through it without the commentary.
Right.
It's actually pretty bad.
Yep.
That's what I figured this was going to be. And the only reason I ended up turning off Dead Sushi is because I was getting tired and I had to drive home from Burbank. It is constantly engaging, constantly batshit. And if you watch anything that this guy does, you're like, yep, that's the definition. There's no, shut her down, boys. He is the epitome of batshit cinema.
Wow.
Oh, interesting.
He should be on the Mount Rushmore.
Well, I brought a movie up there while you were talking about that. I wondered if it was on Matt's list.
No, it wasn't. Mainly because this movie, just the first I ever heard about this movie was from you and my brother. I think we may have lost Nick fully.
That's what I say with great confidence, that no other film was ever made that was
what is
better
happening?
Example of pure
Nick?
creativity,
Nick?
drive, passion,
Nick,
all the other things that make
Nick.
Watching
Are you able to hear us,
so
Nick?
important.
So
It's
we
such a
have a
big part.
frozen image of Nick on the screen right now, but he's talking in the
Truly.
background. But I think it's the last things he spoke that were just played over his now lifeless body on here. That's I'm gonna hang up on Nick. I'm gonna try to call him
his death
back.
rattle.
That was so weird. That was so uncomfortably weird. That was a batshit crazy movie we just watched right there. Nick is online. Nick, well, we'll get back to Nick in a second. So Ben,
I can talk about rubber.
Yeah, Ben did mention this, and I mainly want Ben to describe the plot, because what happened with this movie is I think I was coming home from a trip, and I was with you and my brother, and both of you started telling me about this movie and describing it to me, and I was like, I don't understand. So describe this movie.
The plot of Rubber, if there is a plot, considering the first shot of a movie is just a car randomly driving around things in the desert, it's about a tire that gets angry and then just decides to start killing people. Kind of.
And the tire just it rolls on its own.
It just rolls on its own. And it sometimes vibrates when it gets angry. It's very bizarre.
It is. You guys both, and you're like, oh yeah, and then the tire goes and attacks this lady. I'm like, I don't understand what this looks like. I need visuals for this. I don't understand.
Yeah.
It's a French movie, right? It's like some French filmmaker.
I mean, it was shot in America. So
Okay.
I have one to bring up, which
Yeah.
I want that. I wish that Nick was on because I think he's seen it.
Let me see if I try one more time here. That's a good sign. Bad chick, Nick.
That's what I think. Noburo Iguchi is the godfather.
No, we already got that part in.
We already.
So here's what happened. You froze, and then it was silent for like 20 seconds, and then everything you said during those 20 seconds played over your still image while we were
And
we
we're
were
like,
talking
Nick?
for a little bit.
Nick?
And we were like, Nick, is that you? It's the ghost of Nick.
Yeah, it was like Ben said it was like your death rattle.
Wait, so you did hear my TED Talk joke then?
No, I did not get to a TED Talk
It
joke.
may have fallen off.
Damn it.
Next time, Nick. Next time. So Ben's about to bring up a movie.
So, anyways, we talked about Rubber a little bit, but now, the one of the movies I wanted to bring up that I feel like is batshit, both from a narrative standpoint. Well, so it's one of those things where it's like you can look at it. It doesn't qualify as batshit of just being like completely off the rails in every single direction, whatever. But it's got no clear narrative path. It's got no clear aesthetic path. It's all over the place from a thematic standpoint. It just feels like a bunch of shit that's just like thrown at the screen.
Oh, Transformers: Rise of the Fallen.
Oh, how do you know, man?
I knew it.
No, but that movie is Richard Kelly's Southland Tales.
I held off because I was pretty sure it would be on your list,
Yes.
and we covered this a long time ago on the podcast,
Probably in
but
2013.
This is one of my favorite off the rails, beautiful train wrecks.
Yeah, because it's one of those movies, and I think one of the things that also I wanted to mention that I feel like qualify as like batshit crazy movies are movies that they're not bad. There are some bad batshit movies, obviously, but if it's a batshit crazy movie, it's a movie that you will revisit. You'll watch again. You'll go back and be like, it's worth seeing this movie again.
Well, and the casting in Southland Tales is where you know it knows it's a batshit movie. There's like a ton of strange SNL, like ex-SNL cast members.
Right.
Then you've got Sarah Michelle Gellar as a porn star. You've got
Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson is the biggest movie star / secret agent in the world or whatever. Sean William Scott is a
racist cop.
John Lovitz is his sometimes partner.
It is such a weird movie. And so
and Christopher Lambert is an arms dealer.
And Justin Timberlake is the narrator.
Justin Timberlake is an ex like
military
Marine, who is also the narrator of the movie. That movie's fucking crazy. It's kind of fun. It's fun.
So I remember that was his follow-up, his
Donnie
direct
Darko.
follow-up to Donnie Darko, Richard Kelly, and that was back when everyone was just like, "Oh, we can't wait to see what this guy does next."
It came out 5 years after Donnie Darko.
Yeah. And it was this sprawl. It's like a 3-hour fucking movie. It's the
director's
epic.
cut's over 3 hours long. It's got like a complimentary comic that goes with it, so it fills in all the other shit that you don't because you watch that movie once and say you understand it, like what Richard Kelly was trying to go for. You're lying. I'm sorry. You just don't. You're not going to get it.
Well, and what you start to realize with Richard Kelly as you watch his movies as well is that Donnie Darko was an accident.
It was an accident.
And it was a beautiful accident.
Yeah.
But yeah, his interpretation of the events of that movie are not the
Exactly.
widely accepted interpretation of the. But yeah, Southland Tales, it defies. I mean, yes, you could do a dissertation, I'm sure, on it and make some shit up, but there's not anything solid there to really latch on to. It just exists.
No,
you need a long unbroken shot and a Tears for Fears song if you hope that your film's going to come out cohesive.
There you go.
It tied the whole movie together. It's like Lebowski's rug.
It kind of does.
Hey, can I get another ruling, you guys?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Batshit or not? Cabin in the Woods.
No.
Not batshit. Great movie. Love the movie.
Bordering on batshit?
No, it's just high concept.
It's just high concept.
Well,
it's not batshit.
It's just high concept, though. I mean, it's that third act is batshit.
There's a single
Okay.
batshit scene in that movie, but the movie as a whole I don't think is batshit.
No, I don't think so. So I would argue the movie more along the lines of batshit would be like where you're juggling high concept versus batshit. Like City of Lost Children, Janae and Caro, that's a batshit crazy movie. I mean, it's got a brain that talks to people.
Yeah. Yes. City of Lost. Yes, that's a really good one.
It's got Ron Perlman basically having what's close to a romantic relationship with a 12-year-old. It's all over the place narratively, visually. It's batshit crazy. It's also high concept, and it's a high concept science fiction, this other world. But I would still consider that something that's
all right. So I have a ruling.
The Star Wars Christmas special, batshit or not?
Batshit because it has to be.
Now I have a ruling on this one as well. I like the ruling is kind of interesting on this. I consider this batshit, but you guys may consider it too mainstream. Big Trouble in Little China.
Not batshit enough.
Yeah, Ben shook his head almost immediately.
Well, actually, you know what?
It's a fucking batshit fucking movie.
I actually agree with Matt. I think it's a batshit movie.
You can have a cohesive plot and be batshit.
Now, yes, and well, so what's even funnier is and so there is a cohesive plot, but so this is. I was just kind of looking up movies from my youth, and one of the ones that like popped into my head. And it's not bad shit. It's just a bad movie. Is Garbage Pail Kids the movie?
Oh sure.
I wanted to look up the.
Matt, when the first credit of a film says a Topps trading card company movie, you know you're about to see something bad.
So I was like, okay, I wanted to go back to see if I remembered. So I was looking up plot summaries, and someone wrote the greatest plot summary for Garbage Pail Kids the movie on IMDb, and is their official plot summary, and this is it. 7 disgusting kids, but nevertheless of interesting personality, are being made of the green mud coming out of a garbage can. Once alive, their master gives them rules to obey, although they think that life is funnier without following stupid regulations like no television or no candy. Naturally, this will cause some conflicts.
Yep.
And that's the greatest description, plot summary of that movie I've ever heard.
Do you guys know what your Garbage Pail Kid name is? Like, did you ever see those cards and find your name and remember what it was?
There are a few for mine. I'm trying to remember. There are definitely a few of them, but
Sick Nick. Sick Nick. He's like picking his nose.
Has been. No.
Look,
I do have one. There you go, Nick the Dick. Oh, they're Nick pick. Oh, do you send girls Nick pics? Nick?
No, I send them Nick works of art.
I do have one last one. One last one I definitely wanted to talk about. And unfortunately, the sequel to this movie gets much more play as far as a batshit crazy movie than the original. But I think a lot of people forget how nuts the original was. And that is the Troll. Troll the movie. Troll 2. Not Troll 2. But let me just tell you some of the amazing things that happen in Troll. A family moves into this apartment complex. The little girl goes down into the basement to get a ball, and she gets possessed by this troll that has a little ring with a prick, like a needle on it, right? She becomes a wild child at this point. She starts eating like weird hamburgers, like grossly, and she starts to try to infect the people that live in her apartment complex. And the people that live there are Barbara Billingsley, famous from Leave It to Beaver, Sonny Bono, famous as the husband of Cher and mayor of Palm Springs. That's a joke. And young Julia Louis-Dreyfus and her future husband, Brad Hall. Now, have either of you seen the original movie, The
I've
Troll?
never seen the original Troll.
So it's hard to tell exactly what his goal is, but he starts pricking people in the apartment complex with his pin.
Yeah, he does.
All right, calm down. And they turn into like forest creatures, and he starts turning the apartment complex into like this fairy troll land that he's going to take over everything with. It is weird. And I watched this entire movie many times as a child, thinking like someday I'll get this movie. Like I'll be an adult and I'll understand. It is a uncomfortably strange movie with no real thread other than that Barbara Billingsley turns out to have known what was going on the whole time because she's like some sort of ancient witch as well. Like, it's a weird, but my favorite scene in that movie always will be after the girl gets possessed by the troll, her dad brings back these hamburgers for the family. He goes, I got 2 Works burgers and something else. I never heard the term Works for a burger before. And she goes, Works burger, Works. And she starts just like jamming. And there's just lettuce and things flying everywhere. And he's like, boy, she's got a real appetite. And it's this little 5-year-old blonde. It'd be like if Luna. It would be like if Luna just was like, Works burger.
So you're
it's a
saying
weird,
it's
every
what
night.
happens in my house every day.
It is Troll 2 gets too much credit for being the weird one. Troll 1 is a bizarre fucking movie. That's all I'm saying.
I believe it.
Start that online petition. Fuck Troll 2. Troll 1 is the real batshit movie.
That's right. Never forget the original.
Never forget.
Do you guys have any other things on your list you want to cover, gentlemen?
Not that I particularly want to cover at this point. I think we've worn that batshit territory pretty thin.
Well, I had 4. Okay, I'll do 2.
Name them off.
2 more. Just kidding. I don't have any more. I'm done.
Good. There we go. We all did it on time.
Did we?
We did. We're right on time.
We hit our 1 hour and 57-minute goal.
I mean, I didn't get to talk about Soul Man, where C. Thomas Howell paints his skin black to get into Harvard.
I didn't get to talk about David Cronenberg movies like Existence, but
I was going to put Videodrome in there. I didn't get to talk about
Videodrome.
I didn't get a chance to talk about Walk Like a Man, where Howie Mandel's been raised by wolves and goes back to his family with Christopher Lloyd.
I remember
and
that
lives
one.
with him. There are a lot of the ones on here, but that'll be for the next round of batshit crazy movies.
Or Bear Witness, where where a bear witnesses a mob hit, and then he has to go live with Tim Allen, and Tim Allen, has to. Sorry.
Bear Witness. Oh man, that is so funny. That's a random joke. No one else will understand that joke.
That's not a real movie.
That's we'll explain that one next podcast.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, that's apparently on Eli Roth's I want to make this movie list.
Well, I want to thank you all for listening to The New Way. I hopefully I will make it back from sea tomorrow. I'm heading off onto a bachelor party cruise, and all I keep thinking about is
batshit.
All I keep thinking about is Nick sending me this clip
because of the implication.
And that's all I can think about. If you know that reference and you're a Sunny fan, that will make a lot of sense. But hopefully I will make it back from the seas. We're going 100 miles offshore. How far the Bahamas? Not even 100 miles. What is it?
Well,
who knows?
Will you have internet out there?
I don't think so.
Yeah, you will.
I have a cell service, but no Wi-Fi.
Yeah, you will.
I'm just a little Instagram proof of life every couple hours would be great for your friends that care about you.
I don't want photography from this trip. I don't know.
The touche.
I just don't.
I've been on this cruise 3 times before.
This is wasn't one of these cruises the famous Ben Bloody Mary, a couple beers and a Bloody Mary?
Yeah, that was John's bachelor party where they couldn't find me on Sunday, and they found me they were like, Ben, we've been looking for you for 2 hours. Where you been? I was just like, just at the bar. He's like, are you hammered? I was like, Bloody Mary. A couple beers.
I guarantee that will be me at 2 p.m. tomorrow. So we'll see.
The best part about that trip, though, is that the night before, no, sorry, it was that night. It was actually that night that we were just like, where'd Ben go? And they couldn't find me. And they were like, oh, well, check the piano bar or whatever. So somebody goes into the piano bar.
I love it. That's the first. Oh, Ben's missing. Check the piano bar.
Check the piano bar. So they come into the piano bar.
Ben Wilson be off to?
And he can't find me. And then he looks up and realizes that the person playing piano is me.
Oh, boy.
So I have now taken over the piano bar. I'm playing piano and singing Billy Joel and getting tips.
Lord. And getting tipsy. I imagine. But all right. We want to thank you guys so much for listening and recommending this podcast topic for us. We'll be back soon with another episode to titillate and educate you all out there. So thank you so much for listening. We'll talk to you next time.
Wait. Can I get one last ruling?
Okay. One more.
One last ruling.
Fear
and Loathing in
it's
Las
average
Vegas.
It's on the edge.
Well, there are bats, so I'll call it batshit crazy.
There are the lizard scene, which is all I kept thinking about from Nick's Japan trip.
This is bat country.
Yeah, I think it's pretty close. I think it's pretty close.
It's batshit.
All right, kids. We'll talk to you soon. Cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers.